President Donald Trump's latest executive order on drug prices arrives with great fanfare, but even greater cause for concern. While it appears to promise savings for seniors and cuts to bloated pharmaceutical costs, a closer look reveals a chaotic, contradictory, and potentially dangerous approach to healthcare reform. Trump's directive comes as his administration simultaneously pushes for tariffs on imported pharmaceuticals, an aggressive policy that could dramatically raise the cost of many critical medications and strain already fragile supply chains. At best, this move is a political spectacle. At worst, it's a gamble with Americans' health. Let's start with the most glaring contradiction. The White House claims to be lowering drug prices while actively pursuing trade barriers that will almost certainly raise them. Tariffs on pharmaceuticals, especially those produced abroad and imported to the U.S. in large quantities, threaten to restrict access to life-saving medications and exacerbate shortages. The U.S. is deeply reliant on global pharmaceutical manufacturing, with an overwhelming share of active pharmaceutical ingredients, APIs, and finished drugs originating from India, China, and Europe. Slapping tariffs on these products is akin to putting a tax on illness, forcing patients, particularly the elderly and chronically ill, to pay the price for a politically motivated trade war masquerading as economic nationalism. Moreover, the executive order seeks changes to the Medicare drug price negotiation framework, a policy that only recently began under the Inflation Reduction Act during Biden's presidency. That legislation was hailed as a breakthrough, granting Medicare the unprecedented ability to negotiate prices directly for a handful of high-cost drugs. These were hard-won changes that promised billions in savings for taxpayers and reduced out-of-pocket costs for seniors. But rather than building on that progress with thoughtful policy, Trump's team is pushing for changes that could very well undermine the whole effort. One such change involves adjusting the eligibility timelines for drug price negotiation. Currently, biologics, complex and costly drugs, get a 13-year grace period before they can be subjected to Medicare negotiations, compared to 9 years for small molecule drugs like pills. Trump claims this difference discourages innovation in cheaper treatments and promotes investment in more expensive therapies. But the proposed solution, leveling the timelines, not only bends to pharmaceutical industry lobbying but also risks delaying negotiations for those small molecule drugs that are most commonly used by average Americans. Instead of accelerating cost relief, this shift could result in patients waiting longer and paying more. Another dangerous thread in Trump's plan is the revival of failed initiatives from his previous term. The idea of importing drugs from Canada, once hyped as a solution to U.S. drug prices, has shown itself to be largely unworkable. Canada's drug supply is limited, and its government has expressed opposition to large-scale exports that could compromise availability for its own citizens. The fact that only Florida has received FDA approval for a small-scale pilot and that no widespread program has materialized should serve as a red flag, not an invitation to double down on a policy with dubious feasibility and little long-term promise. Then there's the so-called site-neutral payment reform, another idea recycled from Trump's first administration. On paper, standardizing Medicare reimbursement for services across doctors' offices and hospitals may sound logical. Why pay more for the same treatment at a hospital? But in practice, this change could devastate rural and community hospitals that rely on higher reimbursements to stay afloat. These facilities, often the only lifeline in underserved areas, are already struggling with staffing shortages and tight budgets. Cutting their funding under the guise of cost savings could force closures, reduce care access in vulnerable regions, and deepen the rural health crisis gripping much of the country. Moreover, Trump's administration continues to target the 340B drug pricing program, a federal initiative that allows safety net hospitals to buy drugs at steep discounts to better serve low-income patients. Instead of strengthening this critical system, the executive order suggests that hospitals are misusing the funds and may not be passing savings on to patients, setting the stage for regulatory rollbacks. This approach reflects a disturbing trend, shifting blame to struggling providers rather than holding pharmaceutical companies and insurers accountable for soaring drug prices. Also embedded in the order is a call to investigate pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs, the intermediaries between drug manufacturers, pharmacies, and insurers. While there is no doubt PBMs have played a murky role in inflating prices, Trump's sudden interest in increasing transparency in this sector rings hollow when considering his previous administration's failure to push through meaningful reform. His own allies in Congress stripped PBM reform provisions from a bipartisan funding package in late 2024 after lobbying from corporate interests, hardly a signal of true commitment to cleaning up the system. Even if one were to assume some good faith intent in these directives, the elephant in the room remains. Very little of what Trump is proposing can be implemented unilaterally. Most of the key provisions, including Medicare negotiation reform and broader structural changes, require congressional approval. With a bitterly divided Congress and a looming presidential election, the odds of meaningful, bipartisan healthcare legislation are slim to none. In essence, the executive order functions more as a campaign document than a blueprint for real reform, an attempt to give the appearance of action without confronting the deeper structural rot within the pharmaceutical industry. And all of this comes as Americans are still reeling from the economic and emotional toll of the COVID-19 pandemic. Millions are uninsured or underinsured, and drug prices remain among the highest in the developed world. Families routinely ration insulin, skip necessary medications, or fall into debt over medical bills. What's needed now is not symbolism or sabotage, but courageous, consistent leadership that puts patient welfare over political expediency. Trump's executive order doesn't deliver that. Instead, it offers a patchwork of recycled ideas, political feints, and half measures that could do more harm than good. By pursuing tariffs while claiming to lower prices, and by targeting safety net programs while giving a pass to drug manufacturers, this directive sends a chilling message. Corporate profit still reigns supreme, even in matters of life and death. Americans deserve better than this tangled web of contradictions. They deserve a government that fights for affordable health care, not one that weaponizes it for applause lines and trade wars.